Is this thing on? Hello. It's been a hot minute. I think at the very least, I owe you guys a little bit of an update. First of all, kind of sort of fired myself from being MissFitAndNerdy, but here I am. We're still MissFitAndNerdy. I needed a break. I'm here. But let me take off my shoes. Moving forward, I think my content's gonna change a bit. To just be a little prepared. That's not the point of this video. The point of this video is that I have been dragging you guys on a never-ending skin healing journey with me for the last few years, and I have updates, and I promised you I'd give you updates. So I have the updates for you. I think they're good updates. Also, so many of you have yelled at me in the comments about giving a review for working with Krista Biegler, so I will touch on that in this video as well for all of you that keep demanding that. I finally have my consensus. Basically, overview. I took 2 big tests that I think have highlighted some root causes of my skin issues and explained a lot of things that have been going on, and then I will also talk about working with Krista. So let's break it down. First thing is, I told you guys, might have been the last video, it's been so long since I've posted a video or 2 ago, that I took a mold test, and it turns out I am moldy. I'll throw the results up here. When I first took the test, I told you guys I personally didn't know how to interpret them, other than it clearly showing that I was excreting some amount of mold. Like, there are some things that are in the red, some things that are in the yellow. Not everything is in the green, therefore it's not in the green. What I have since learned about these test results is Krista, the practitioner who ordered the test, said that it was really bad, clearly bad mold issue. And then another practitioner that I worked with said that it really didn't look that bad. And so I was like, okay, like I need some sort of answer here. So I did what one does when they have health issues that they can't get to the root cause of and are feeling desperate. I went to the internet, went in some forums, asked a bunch of questions. And what I ended up learning is that essentially this test is a urine test. So it only measures what your body is actively excreting. It does not tell you what is currently in your body or the level of anything in your body. So the fact that I was excreting some amount of mold could mean a number of things. One being I had just randomly encountered some mold and my body was like, okay, time to get rid of it, and it was detoxing it perfectly fine and it was just passing out of my body. So it's not necessarily a terrible thing to be excreting mold, because like we live in a modern environment, there's mold pretty much everywhere. It's kind of unavoidable, but if your body can detox it out, you're good. So at the very least, those test results meant that there was probably a somewhat recent exposure. Or it could mean that I have mold like stuck in my body and my body is working on moving it out, and that's all it was getting out at the time. Leading up to the test, I did go heavy on some bile mover supplements, which should have increased the amount of mold that my body was excreting. So there was also that as a factor for my results. But either way, it could mean that like I am moldy, I have mold stuck in my body, and my body is processing it, and so some of it's coming out, but you have no idea what that ratio is of like, I'm chock full of mold and some of it's coming out and not all of it's coming out, or whatever. So the test in itself doesn't give any definitive answers, but when combined with some situational, circumstantial symptoms, I do think it points to active mold exposure. And this is something that I have thought for a very, very, very long time. I've said that I'm allergic to Southern California, but I wasn't 100% sure it was Southern California or just my parents' house. And at this point in time, it's now been like 2 or so months, 3, since I've taken that test. So I've been a lot more aware of this. I am pretty darn sure that I'm at the very least allergic to my parents' house, if not that is where the mold is, if mold is the root cause of my skin issues. Over the years, like since college basically, when I left and then came back home, there was a pattern of me having some sort of reaction whenever I would come to my parents' house. And the only time that that didn't happen is when I was going so consistently, I think, that I wasn't able to like heal in between going to their house. So the longer I would spend away from their house, the more severe my reaction was when I would go there. And so I decided to put this to the test in the last couple months. Like once I got those test results, I was like, okay, like maybe it's my parents' house, I'm not gonna go there. I spent probably a good month and a half not going home, and in that month and a half went deep into mold detox protocols. My skin was like almost perfect. And then I went home for one day. I spent one night in my parents' house and my skin started flaring. And I think one of the reasons it's been so hard to put together is that my skin didn't flare that night. It was over the course of like 2 or 3 weeks after that it got progressively worse and worse and worse until I was like, oh no, this is terrible. And then it started finally getting better. And so I think that's why it's been difficult for me to pinpoint, is because it's not an acute reaction. And oftentimes, so this is why maybe it's not mold, maybe I am just allergic or something. Oftentimes mold presents with acute symptoms. Like people who have an issue with mold will go into the moldy space and like almost immediately feel the brain fog or feel the respiratory symptoms or feel something that's indicative of them being in a space that their body is not happy with. And that's not really what happens to me. For me, it takes, I guess, a couple weeks for symptoms to really manifest. And because I've been visiting San Diego, visiting my parents' house like every couple weeks for the last maybe year or so, I never had time to have the symptoms peak and then subside and then notice the flare again. Like if your body is already inflamed and reacting, it's gonna be harder to notice when you're in an environment that's causing inflammation and reaction because you're already in that hyper alarm state. So basically, that's my current status with the mold, is I am avoiding my parents' house for good, not for good, but like probably for a couple months. Thankfully, I have some great friends in San Diego that I can stay with in the meantime, so I can still visit everybody. But that would explain a lot because I obviously grew up in my parents' house. They live in the same house that I grew up in. And so if there is some amount of mold there, then I grew up in an environment that was just like highly toxic to my body, and clearly my body has had some issues with that. It's still not a definitive answer. It still might not be mold related. I could literally have had like one mold exposure right before I took the test and that's what was coming out. I do plan on retesting at some point. It's just not like the cheapest test on the planet, so I don't want to test like every couple weeks. I ran out of battery, yay. Hopefully this battery actually has battery. I don't know, I haven't picked up my camera in a month. But anyway, game plan for that is I am going to pretend it is mold, assume it is mold, and go through a mold detox protocol. Mold can take 6 months to a year to fully detox, so I would be, in theory, in this for the long haul. I think at some point I'll make a separate video on that full actual detox protocol, just like step by step. Basically, that is part 1 of this current phase of my healing protocol, is a mold detox protocol. Now, test number 2 that I took, I think is one of the coolest tests that I have ever taken, that gave me some of the most info of any test I have ever taken, which is very exciting for me because you guys know me. I love bio-individuality, I love bio-individual data, and I love being able to take a bio-individual approach to my own health journey and anyone's health journey. I think that's the best route forward. And this was the hair tissue mineral analysis that I told you guys about like 2 videos ago. I got the results, and these results just explained so many extra symptoms that I've been feeling in the last like year and a half, 2 years, that I couldn't really articulate and kind of felt like they were in my head. But this just like really validated to me that it's not in my head, it's real. So hair tissue mineral analysis, they basically take like tiny bits of your hair that like from the root, and you have to use like this much from the root. So she took a bunch of pieces from around my head, shipped it off to some place, and they test that. And what it basically tells you is like your hair obviously grows out of your body, and there are minerals in your hair, and so this test can essentially tell you your different mineral levels and also toxin levels. There is a ton of nuance in being able to interpret these tests, and I do think it is particularly important to do like a follow-up test, because one singular test is very much a snapshot. It doesn't tell you exactly what's happening. It tells you what your current body looks like. So like, for example, there are more toxic elements that can kind of hide in your body, that can just be buried deep in the tissue that your body isn't even detoxing. It's just like stuck. And so that's not going to show up on an HTMA because your body's not even detoxing it. It's not getting to the point where it's ending up in your hair. So it's very much a snapshot, but it can give you a really good direction to move in. So I'll quickly like walk through my test results with you guys. We have the initial page of the overall nutritional elements. So you have calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, copper, zinc, etc., etc. Toxic elements, I'm a little bit high in uranium and arsenic, which I guess uranium is very high in like rock formations in San Diego specifically. So I guess people that live in San Diego tend to be uranium toxic. That's a fun fact. So then there's a couple pages that go through the specific nutritional levels that I have, and thankfully the practitioner that I worked with, if anyone is in San Diego and wants her information, by the way, let me know. I can send you her name and info. She's amazing. But she said that none of them are concerningly far off, other than I am very deficient in sodium and very deficient in potassium. However, where we get to the interesting stuff is when you look at the significant ratios of the different minerals. This is where it tells you a lot about what's going on. And this is also where everything feels like it makes so much more sense to me, which I'll go into in a hot sec. Basically, as an overview, calcium to phosphorus ratio is your metabolic ratio. For me, it's showing that because my ratio is slightly high, I have a slower metabolic rate. So my body is just not metabolizing things as quickly as it should be, which can lead to more exhaustion in the body, parasympathetic dominance, diminished thyroid and adrenal activity. Symptoms may include dry skin. We also have the stress ratio. Mine is very high. Acute alarm stage of stress and inflammation. Yay. And it's representative of a loss of magnesium, which is interesting because my magnesium level itself wasn't too far off, but because we have this ratio, we know that magnesium is being utilized at too high of a rate. I think that's what it's saying. Thyroid ratio, calcium to potassium, is showing sluggish thyroid activity, which explains why one of the lab tests I did a video with, ooh, who was it? Joy, I think, showed that my thyroid numbers were like a little bit off. Like, I don't even think they were technically out of standard range, but I think one or two of them were out of like functional lab ranges. And so she said that this could explain that. Hormone ratio of zinc to copper is high. Adrenal ratio is low, showing sluggish adrenals. Symptoms can include fatigue, decreased stamina, brain fog. My blood sugar ratio is good, so that's nice. So all in all, gives me so much information. And obviously I've been dealing with skin issues for like a very long time. That was my main reason for taking this test, to see if there's any like deficiencies that are making it difficult for my body to heal. And clearly, like, my body is not balanced, so balancing these things should help a lot. But something I've been experiencing in the last year to two has been what I can only describe as like depression / ADHD symptoms, but I don't have depression or ADHD. And it manifested as it being really freaking hard to get out of bed in the morning. Like, I would wake up and could not get myself out of bed without scrolling for like an hour. And like mentally I had the motivation to get out of bed. I was like, okay, I want to get up, I want to do things. But I just physically felt like I didn't have the capacity. I just felt as a whole extremely stuck, extremely drained. Like, I had motivation to do a lot of things that I just couldn't get myself to do. And like, examples of how this was kind of impacting me, since I have been following a protocol for the last month or two, and in the last week or so I realized my bed's been getting made every day, my laundry gets put away right away, my room has been staying clean, I've been cooking from home more, and that feels effortless. Like, before it felt like I had no momentum, and it felt like everything felt really heavy. Like, it felt like just getting started on something felt like trying to roll a boulder up a hill. And if you'd asked me, I would have said I felt extremely burnt out. Like, I just didn't have the stuff that I needed to get myself to do stuff. And this test is showing that that is precisely correct. I am depleted of the vitamins and minerals that my body needs to actually do the things. I am literally, according to the person who reviewed this, she said I am in a burnout pattern. And honestly, like, hearing that is so validating. Like it really intuitively feels like physiological burnout. Like I burned through all the gas in the tank, I got nothing, which was another reason I fired myself, but that's beside the point. But that in itself, it makes me feel so much better, because for so long I felt like it was all in my head. I felt like it was just me not doing good enough. Like somehow I had lost my motivation and just needed to get it back and do like the self-work to like stop being addicted to my phone and just be able to get out of bed in the morning. And like, it wasn't my fault. I mean, one could argue it's my fault for getting myself into this burnout state. Others would argue that that would be victim blaming if I said it was my fault for getting into this burnout state. But again, beside the point. But basically, I am so glad that I took this test. So much insight. And the biggest thing that I'm doing based off of this information is, I guess, two huge things. One, because I'm so deficient in sodium and potassium, I am chugging sodium and potassium like nobody's business. Like she said, to consume between 1 and 2 teaspoons of added salt per day. So I'm putting like 1/4 teaspoon of salt in all of my drinks and all of my food, plus usually a little bit more than that with dinner, because I can cram a lot of salt into dinner. And then this is also full of a very potassium rich electrolyte mix. So I'm also aiming for 4,700 milligrams of potassium per day, which is like a lot of potassium. So drinking a lot of it, eating a lot of bananas, eating a lot of potatoes is kind of my main focus right now. And then on top of that, with the HTMA, I got a custom vitamin and mineral blend. This is literally made for Marissa based off of my test results. This is like a 4-month supply. It was not cheap, I will say that, but like if it fixes me, I would pay 10 times as much. But I have been dosing this for, I think, probably like 5 weeks now. And those are really the main things that are on the list of things to do, but there's also like a whole page of recommended things. One of the somewhat ironic things is that she said, don't do cardio, lift weights. And I was like, well, there goes my dream again of running 10 miles. We'll get there one day, but after my minerals are balanced. Basically, my body is extremely depleted and I just need to take very good care of it, manage my stress, not do any activity that is going to add stress to my body. But most importantly, take my minerals, chug my sodium and potassium. And like I said, in the last, I think I've been doing that for about 5 weeks, and I have been mold detoxing for maybe 2 months, like 8 weeks. And I noticed a very quick improvement at the start. And then, like I said, I went back to my parents' house and flared, and I am finally like over the hump of recovering from that. It's getting better, but it's getting better kind of slowly. But I also haven't made it to the sauna as frequently as I would like. And so I think maybe sauna is a key piece of this. But skin symptoms aside, like mentally, I feel like I am getting better. I still feel very burnt out and very overwhelmed. But like I said, my bed is getting made. Cooking at home feels effortless. Like it really is the little things. And that really does go to show like how everything that I always talk about on this channel is so true. Like it is so much easier to lose weight when your body is healthier, because it takes significantly less effort to do things when you are healthier, and it feels significantly harder to get out of bed in the morning when you're deficient in sodium. So basically, minerals are saving my mental health right now. So I think that's the skin update. I may be moldy, I'm deficient in a lot of things, but I'm detoxing and I'm supplementing, and I think I'm seeing progress, and I think I know where the mold is. I did do some sort of mold test for this house, and it came back all negative. It wasn't one of like the good mold tests, so I do wanna double check, but based off of patterns, I am pretty convinced that my parents' house is the issue for me. So I guess lastly, to review working with Krista of the Less Stress Life podcast. She launched, I think this was the first time, she was running a like group coaching program, and she launched that last December, and I joined last December, and it was a 6-month program. Overall, I feel like the information presented was very solid. I'm finding as I go on this mold detox journey that the research that I'm doing is essentially what everything that she was saying. The content of the lessons themselves was good. The list of recommendations for supplements and everything was good. Basically, I completely trust her when it comes to the information, the implementation of the information. Like, she knows what she's doing. She also very much changed my perspective on how I am approaching healing my skin. Like, before working with her, I was taking a very myopic approach to healing my skin, and I didn't even realize it. Like, I was trying all of these one-off things, like all of these different diets, all of these different protocols that are designed for like one specific thing. Like, for example, the low histamine diet specifically targets histamine. She took a very multifaceted approach to skin health, and that is a perspective that I was definitely missing in my journey. I also don't know if I ever would have taken a mold test if it weren't for her ultimately suggesting that that was something that I needed to do, and clearly that has potentially given me a lot of insight. So I do think I got a lot out of the program and a lot out of working with her. I learned a ton. It definitely changed my perspective. And if this path that I'm on does end up healing me, like, I will absolutely be giving her huge credit in being a pivotal point in my healing journey. That said, it genuinely hurts my soul to be saying negative things about people that I have worked with, which is also partially why I put this off for so long, because I was really having a hard time for the 6 months that I was working with her, and I wanted to make sure I got through those full 6 months before I knew for sure whether or not it was or wasn't working, and could like fully judge the program itself. In the 6 months of working with her, I did not get better. In fact, I went through one of the worst flares of my life. I do not think it was at all related to anything she recommended to me. I will clarify that. I ended up dating someone and being extremely allergic to him. I don't know. But in going through the 6 months of the program, I did not notice any improvement. And I think one of the big reasons why is that the whole premise of her group program is minimal to no testing, which I get because testing can be expensive. It can deter a lot of people from healing. I don't think it's necessarily the wrong approach as a whole when you're working with a large group of people. If you want to minimize cost, maximize results, that just didn't work for me, because I took her mold assessment, which was just like a little questionnaire of like symptoms, and it came back that it was very unlikely that I was dealing with mold related symptoms. And so we proceeded with treatment as though I had no mold exposure. And it wasn't until the very end of the program where she was like, well, if you haven't gotten better in 6 months, it's probably mold. And it hurts, because everything else I was doing in the program would have worked really well for mold. The only other thing that I needed to do was add in a binder. So like take like a charcoal, a zeolite, a spirulina, etc. Like something to bind to the mold to pull it out of my body. And if I had been doing that for 6 months, like that's 6 months closer to healing from mold toxicity, where instead I was essentially just spinning my wheels, doing all these things that was like mobilizing the mold, but not getting it out of my body. And so for me, testing to start would have led to a better outcome. So there was that piece of the program that just like didn't work for me as an individual. I'm sure on average for most people, like she's probably right for most people. So that's kind of neither here nor there as to whether or not I recommend working with her. But where I really struggled within the program itself was that I wasn't getting better. I could tell I wasn't getting better. You know, like I've lived in this body for the last 30 years of my life. I've been through ebbs and flows. I know my skin pretty well at this point and how it reacts to things and how flares come and go. And I could tell I was not getting better. And in fact, I was literally in like crippling pain at one point thanks to the guy that I was allergic to. Like, a whole face was swollen, body was starting to swell. But what I was met with when I was voicing my concern at me not getting better was the idea that I'm a perfectionist that needs to work through my perfectionism, and I need to stop trying so hard to do all the things and instead just trust the process. And that's where I really felt like I was getting kind of gaslit like the entire time. Because I know that I do have perfectionistic tendencies. It's something that I've worked on in therapy. It's something I've actually worked through pretty darn well. So I know when something's coming from that place, but in me asking over and over, like, what more can I do? Is there something I can do differently? Like, what can I do to start healing? That was coming from a place of, I have been in pain and discomfort for years, and I'm tired of it. And I paid for this 6-month program, and I'm now 4 months into the 6 months, have not seen a single change. I am scared that I'm gonna have paid for this whole thing and essentially have wasted my money because I'm not seeing any changes. And all I'm being told is that I should stop trying to think about what else I can do because it's a perfectionistic tendency, rather than I'm just desperately trying to not be in pain anymore. Like, at one point I even asked, like, should I be taking a binder? Because most people in the program were taking binders because they had symptoms of mold exposure. And I was met with, like, only as a last resort, if things are really, really bad, blah, blah, blah. And I had just been saying before that I was dealing with the worst flare of my life since topical steroid withdrawal. I was like, is that not a reason to take a binder? It really felt like, I felt like I was being gaslit. And then on top of that, trying to get my questions actually answered kind of felt like pulling teeth, and most of the time it felt like my questions weren't actually getting answered. Like, I would ask a question and get some roundabout answer that eventually led to, like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, I'm paying to learn. I would like the answer rather than me being told to figure it out myself and, like, use my intuition when, like, I don't know, like, you're the expert, that's what I'm paying you for. And I will say it was very, very frustrating at the end when I finally took the mold test. I didn't know that it would take a couple weeks to get so she prescribed it to me. She said, I think you should do this, and then, like, sent me the link to be able to order it because you need, like, a practitioner to order the test for you. And so I paid for it, went through with that. Didn't know that it would take a couple weeks to get my results back. And so by the time I got the results, my time in the program had ended. And so I wasn't sure if I was even gonna get an evaluation on the results. I got the printout and I was like, I don't know what to do with this information. Like, is this good? Is this bad? Like, I don't know. And so I sent an email and I was like, hey, like, can I get some insight into this? And just the tone with which it was handled didn't feel great. And I'm kind of gonna leave it at that, but I will just say it was handled in a way that I would not do to any of my paying clients as a group coach. And it genuinely pains me to say that because I don't like to, I'm speaking on a public platform giving a negative review, but I have to be honest with my experience with that because a lot of you have been asking me for a full review, and I, you know, like, that was my experience, and it was an extremely frustrating, demoralizing, painful experience. So that's what we got there. Do with that information what you will. So that's where we're at. That's where we are. That's how I'm doing. Let me know if you guys have any questions, comments, thoughts, suggestions. If any of you guys have gone through a mold detox protocol, like, let me know what you did, because I am at this point piecing together things from the internet on my own. So any helpful direction is helpful. I do think I have a pretty solid protocol at this point. Like, I think I've done a good job researching, but I might be missing things, so let me know. But all this is to say, I am cautiously hopeful and optimistic that I am on the right path, taking a more nuanced approach, thanks to Krista. And hopefully that's gonna get me to happy, healthy, balanced, clear, beautiful skin. I'm doing a lot of other things for my skin also, but we'll get to that in a whole other video. But yes, this is the start of yet another Marissa tries to heal her skin protocol. Please keep your fingers crossed for me that this is the last one, the final one, because I don't know how much more of this I can take. And on that note, I'll see you guys when I see you.